This motorcycle is over 80 years old. So let me show you what it's like to own and ride this World War II Norton. Hello, I'm James, the Grumpy Petrolhead. In 2008, I bought this motorcycle on eBay, and I was looking for a 40s big single, an old British bike, and this caught my eye. I wasn't particularly looking for a World War II motorcycle, but this had been subject to a full restoration around about 8 or 9 years prior, so I guess it wasn't too much of a risk. And it seemed to be priced well. It seemed to be a good value for what it was. And when it arrived, I was pleasantly surprised. It was all in good condition. And the guy who restored it had done a really good job on the bike. Not too long after buying the bike, we found out that Brooklands were having their 100-year anniversary of the first motor race at their oval track. So me and a pal thought we'd take a ride down there on our bikes. I took this and my pal took his 500 Triumph. And it was a bit of an eventful trip on the way there because the bike, this kept breaking down. I don't know, every sort of 3/4 of an hour it would just stop. So we took the carburetor apart and cleaned it, and then it would go again. And but we got there and we got back, and we had a little go round the oval track, or what's left of it. So the same thing happened on the way back. Every 3/4 of an hour or so, the bike would just stop. So we'd take the carb off, give it a good clean, and it'd run again. On further investigation, it wasn't the carburetor at all. It was the magneto. It was getting hot and losing its spark when it was warm. That's why when we stopped and took it apart, took the carb apart, it gave it time to cool down and it would run again. A couple of years later, I've had my magneto rebuilt and all is well. So we went back to Brooklands, this time with Catherine on the back and my pal on his 500 Triumph. We got to Brooklands no problem. We had a lovely day there and all is well, except for on the way back. The weather turned. It was biblical. I mean, biblical rain, freak heavy rain we had, and a lot of the roads were flooded. And even one road had actually split, and it had dropped. Half of the road had dropped, and there was like a waterfall cascading over it. It really was quite something. So we rode home in it, and it took us 7 hours, 7 hours in the pouring biblical rain. It was dire. It's one of those moments where you question yourself, why am I doing this? We made it back. Both bikes didn't miss a beat, and looking back, it was quite an adventure, and it was a testament to how reliable you can make these old motorcycles. This bike is a Norton 16H. Norton first made a 16H in 1911, a side valve just under 500cc 4-stroke. And they went on making this 16H until 1954. So it had a long run, but it was quite a different machine back in 1911. And in those days, side valves could be considered as sports bikes. In fact, in 1912, the 16H actually won the TT. And it's quite something to think about a side valve single cylinder engine actually winning races, isn't it? So, World War II, motorcycles were supplied to the ministry from Triumph, BSA, Ariel, and of course Norton. This machine, the Norton 16H, was supplied from 1936 up until 1946. So it had a really good supply run. It was used by the RAF, like this one in blue. It was also supplied to the army in green, and they were used in the Middle East where they were like a sandy colour. This machine was part of one of the last batch of motorcycles supplied to the RAF in 1944. When I bought the bike, it came with a spare engine, which I put aside and I used for some spares. And it wasn't until I used the engine in a project bike that I built that I looked at the engine number and noted that the engine number was the same as the frame number. Now, I do know that these bikes left the factory at Norton with matching engine and frame numbers, but I think it's quite rare to find them still with the same engine and frame together. I imagine if there was a problem with an engine during the war, the bike would go back and a fresh engine or a rebuilt engine would be put in, and then they would get split up. So one day I shall perhaps take that spare engine and swap it with this engine and put it back in the frame where it came out of in 1944. I have noticed on this bike that it has an 18-inch front wheel, and originally it would have been a 19-inch front wheel. So I don't know why the person that rebuilt the bike or restored the bike in the late 80s, early 90s would have put an 18-inch wheel on there. Maybe the wheel, and it looks right, so maybe the wheel is from a Norton model Big 4, because I know the Big 4 had a smaller 18-inch wheel. Also, what's not absolutely correct on this bike is the gearbox. I've noticed that the gearboxes of the time had what's called a doll's head gearbox, and this has a different looking gearbox. If anybody knows what this gearbox is or what it's actually from, it'd be great if you could let me know. It looks period to me, and it looks, it fits in there fine. I'm wondering if it's a Norton Big 4 gearbox. Well, I hope that's given you some idea of what it's like to own and ride a 1944 Norton 16H. I found it a very enjoyable bike to ride and to own. The servicing is very easy. In fact, if you go onto YouTube, you can see some old military reels of how to service and look after and even ride the bike. It's quite fascinating. The bike does have its limitations, obviously. I mean, it's not something you want to be taking on the motorway. I have been on the motorways and it's okay, but its top speed is around 65 and you don't really want to be doing that for very long. It's quite happy at sort of 50 miles an hour. It's in its element in country roads, just plodding about, thumping along and just enjoying the sedentary pace of the machine. So I hope you've enjoyed this latest episode of the Grumpy Petrolhead. And in the following weeks we'll be doing more bikes and some cars as well. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please stick around and we'll see you next time. Cheerio.